This show is part of the RetroZap.com podcast network. And welcome, everybody, to a Pinky in the Brain episode of the Animaniacast.
Have you ever thought, Pinky, why it is that we haven't yet succeeded in taking over the world?
Oh, I know why, Brain. Gremlins. Little sprinkly sprites that confuse us and mix us up, always twiddling their little fingers in our ears.
An interesting theory.
And welcome to the Animanicast. We are the only podcast to talk exclusively about the animated series Animaniacs. And you're probably asking, what are we going to do tonight? And I'll tell you, it's the same thing we do every night. We try to talk about Pinky in the Brain, revisiting all the cultural references and gags, and in the end, we're going to give this episode a water tower rating. I am Joey, and joining me are my co-hosts, Nathan.
Yes, I see.
And Kelly.
Hello.
I think it would have worked, Kelly, if you said, yes, I see, also, because, boy, oh boy, that would have... that was said a lot. What did you say?
I said, sorry to disappoint you.
No problem. Well, today we are going to be talking about episode 3 of Pinky in the Brain, which includes the 2 segments in a song. It includes Tokyo Grows, That Smarts, and Brainstem. And yeah, it's a fun episode of Pinky in the Brain, but what would you guys say about it in a few words? Nathan?
It proves that Brain is not the genius and that Pinky is not insane, I guess. There you go. That's the proof. This is the episode that proves it all.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. Okay, sure. And Kelly, what about you?
I thought it was appropriate timing with the new Godzilla movie out now.
Absolutely, especially with multiple monsters and everything too. We're recording this before the movie comes out, so.
But it's been out for like a week now.
I know, so boy, we should be seeing it now. I hope so. Are you guys planning on seeing this Godzilla movie?
Yeah, I'll see it. What?
The only time I ever saw any kind of Godzilla movies or anything was when they were on Mystery Science Theater 3000.
Oh, yes.
Or MST3K, as most people call it now, but...
Yeah. Against Jet Jaguar. I remember that one with Mystery Science Theater.
I like the one with Gamera.
Gamera, yeah.
They sing the song?
Gamera is really neat. Gamera is full of meat. We believe in Gamera.
Precisely. I thought that was the best thing ever when I heard it.
Ah, yes. Mystery Science Theater is one of those shows that I don't think, because of what they were talking about, which was old movies, for the most part, it really holds up really well. And a lot of the things they were referencing were completely obscure, but they were just funny. I would just laugh along with it, even though I had no idea what they were talking about. It was funny because until the internet really got up and running, I would start Googling some of the things they said and said, oh, it's like that's a dishwashing commercial from the 1960s is what they were referencing. Like, who would have known that?
I think the Tom Servo and Crow puppets are on display now at the Center for Puppetry Arts in Atlanta.
Oh, awesome.
I haven't been back there since they got them, but they have them now.
It is possible to build those, by the way. You can. I've seen the kits on eBay. It cost a lot of money, but you can do it. Well, let's talk. This has no Mystery Science Theater commentary. It just has us talking about it, which we're nowhere near as funny as them. But we're going to try to be at least informational, perhaps. Nathan, tell us, when did today's episode first premiere?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked. So it was a Sunday, if I remember right. I believe it was September 17th. Is that right? 1995?
Yeah, that's what the Wikipedia says, so yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. Because IMDb says differently, so I got all confused. But no, IMDb said that, but I don't know. There was a inconsistency, but I believe the 17th of Sunday was the day, which was one day after the 69th Miss American pageant and the 20th Toronto International Film Festival. It was the same day we found out who shot Mr. Burns, and it was 2 days before the Post and the Times released the Unabomber's manifesto.
Wait a minute. These seem very familiar.
Yeah, I've gone over these things multiple times. I might have said them last time, because who knows when these episodes are.
I want to say you said it during the last Freakazoid one. I'm pretty sure.
Yep, I think so. Because, again, I also said it on the Animaniacs when.
Yeah, so whatever. We're really going to get these facts down. These dates down.
Go over them, but that was Variety Speak, 3 Tenors in Your Out, and Bingo.
Yep.
So that was. Yep.
A
same
date
day.
which will live in infamy.
The day after, but yeah.
Well, let's go ahead and get into our discussion. Let's start off with Tokyo Grows. And Tokyo Grows was written by Gordon Bresick and Charles M. Howell IV, and it was directed by Al Zegler. And Kelly, why don't you tell us what happens here in Tokyo Grows?
Well, this takes place in Tokyo in the 1950s, I guess. There's like those little captions at the beginning of the episode, so we know we're not in the standard Acme Labs. And Pinky and the Brain are listening to the scientists talk about Gollyzilla, and the Emperor wants their feedback on Gollyzilla. And so Brain gets the idea to use a growing ray to make Pinky so big and turn him into Pinkyzilla, and then Brain will make himself big so that he can defeat Pinkyzilla.
I will alter this equipment and enlarge myself to become a 400-foot tall mouse who'll save the world from Gollyzilla.
But you just said there was no such thing as Gollyzilla, Brain.
There is now, Pinky. Or should I say, Pinkzilla. Yes, I see.
But of course, it doesn't go quite according to plan, because Pinky has disappeared, and I don't know how you lose a giant mouse in a lizard costume, honestly. But Brain doesn't know where he is. But then the real Gollyzilla comes out of the water, and Brain doesn't realize it's not Pinky, and so he starts trying to fight with him, and learns that Gollyzilla has, fire and can breathe it, and he thrashes him around with his tail and everything, and he's not doing so well in the battle, and Pinky finally shows up, and he's like, why? Here I am, Brain. He's like, what? No, I'm fighting Pinky. And it doesn't quite occur to him right away that, now there's 3 monsters fighting each other. So, meanwhile, the ray, because the lab's been mostly destroyed, and I guess the ray's been exposed to the air, and it starts zapping things, and buildings start getting huge, and everything starts growing. And then soon the whole world gets bigger. So that sort of puts everything back where it should be, because now everything is the correct size in relation to what it should be.
It's all proportional.
So, right, proportional. That was the word I was looking for. So everybody's bigger, but Pinky and the Brain are still small. But also Gollyzilla is actually small too now, because he's in the cage with them. So, again, proportionally speaking. So, that's pretty much where it ends.
Yeah. Well, perhaps they'll be more successful when they have a fire-breathing lizard and a tiny Raymond Burr with them. I don't know. We'll have to find out, which we never do, of course, but whatever. So there we go. There we have it. I was a little bit worried. I don't know about you, Nathan. I was a little bit worried at the gravitational pull of Earth, since it got bigger in the solar system. That was the only thing I was a little worried about.
It's true. It should be a larger mass, I would assume. Maybe the mass stays the same, in which case the gravity would not change. But it being bigger would affect the sun, because I would think it would be closer to the sun at different times. The rotation would be different. Changes.
I was worried about all that.
See, yeah, that's the only thing I thought of. Adult brain starts getting in the way and going, oh, wait a minute, no.
Yeah.
That's not good for...
Like, you're going to be closer to the sun, you would assume.
Yeah, solar rays and stuff.
Yeah, so it'd be hotter. But, I mean, they still might be alive. And they never said whether the mass changes, but I think it's safe to assume that the mass does change. But, which doesn't make sense, because this conservation of mass is a fundamental property.
Never show an episode of Pinky and the Brain to someone who studies physics and stuff. It's a problem.
Well, that's a problem with Ant-Man too. Just watching those, where he shrinks. He's like, does he weigh as much as he did when he was big? And when he gets really big, does he still weigh like 100 and something pounds? Like,
see, when it comes to Marvel stuff, you just have to go, it's magic. It's magic.
It's magic.
Yep. It is, because the whole time travel thing and Endgame and everything, I'm just like, okay, what? It doesn't make any sense. I'm just going to let it go and let it happen and not think too much about it, because otherwise I will get upset. So, it's magic. Anyway, well, let's go and talk about some of the cultural references in this episode, and there's actually quite a few. In fact, the first one, I had the title itself, Tokyo Grows. I really didn't think much of it, but apparently it's a reference to Tokyo Rose. A Tokyo Rose was actually an English-speaking Japanese woman who during World War II would get on the Allied radio and basically do a lot of propaganda, Ally propaganda. I'm assuming talking about how the Japanese are, going to win the war and stuff like that, to try to demoralize the Americans and the British, perhaps. But I had no idea. I'd never heard of. Whenever I think, if I ever thought of Tokyo Rose, I might think of just like a Japanese restaurant or something like that. Nothing more than that.
I'd heard of her, but I mean, Jeopardy. So,
oh, there you go.
Yeah. It's not like I think we ever learned about her in school.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's like just one of those little things they never really mentioned, but it's a neat, it's a neat little segment, I think. Obviously this is Gollyzilla's Godzilla. We already mentioned that. At one point, Pinky mentions Kaye Ballard, whom I am not really familiar with too much, but she was an American actress and comedian and singer. And she actually died just this year in January. So she was 93, I believe. So she lived quite a long life. The biggest reference, however, is Raymond Burr. And he has one line, other than grunting and groaning and roaring, is, "Yes, I see." And Raymond Burr was in the original 1950s Godzilla movie, or Gojira, or however you want to pronounce it or say it.
Gojira.
Gojira, yes. So the original black and white Godzilla movie. And he was basically, I believe, just dumped in so that American audiences could see an American actor that I don't know if he was known at that point or not, but he's most known for being Perry Mason, which was a TV show in the 60s and even into the 80s and 90s as well. I never really watched Perry Mason. Kelly, did you? It seemed like something my grandmother would watch. And
yeah, no, it looked boring.
Yeah. It was a courtroom drama, and not like Law and Order, which can be somewhat interesting. Perry Mason just looked like old person courtroom. But they have little references, I guess, to different Japanese companies. Like Sony becomes becomes sorry or something. Phony. That's what it is. Sony becomes phony, and there's some other ones as well. But, that's kind of to the side. I'm not going to go through all those. But let's talk about moments that we thought were funny or awesome or whatever. And I guess, Nathan, let's start with you.
I like that Brain didn't think that shrinking things was a good idea, when obviously that's a good idea. Some genius you are, Brain. There we go. It was a good smack talk. And
This scientific equipment will be invaluable for my plan to take over the world.
You mean you're going to shrink electronics so only mice will be able to operate them?
Don't be absurd, Pinky. There's no future in miniaturization.
Why do you think that was a better idea, Nathan?
well, because it happens, you know. People want smaller digital things, you know. What are you talking about? The future is in larger things. Phones are shrinking, or something. I don't know.
Or at least the things inside the phone are shrinking, as the Japanese were. True. But that's their secret, you know. That's how they won that tech battle right there. They were just shrinking stuff.
Yeah,
I totally had Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, by the way, going off in my brain whenever I saw this shrink ray.
Yeah, it reminded me of the comic when they talked about becoming big monsters or something. Yeah, Nathan and I talked about a comic where he said, "Remember when we got big?" And Nathan and I had no idea what they were talking about. Like, okay, apparently that happened. But yeah, and here's the proof. There, you know, it's not really listed in any of our reference guides, but this whole concept, by the way, of the brain going over to Pinky and saying, "Will you get out of that suit? Now come here," and, you know, like, not realizing that it's really Godzilla or Gollyzilla or whatever, and not Pinky in the lizard suit.
Now you've gotten me mad, Pinky.
Excuse me, Brain.
Go away now, Pinky. Can't you see I'm fighting with Pinky?
Narf, right? Oh, no, wait. How can you be fighting with me over there if I'm standing over here?
It's a very simple principle, Pinky. It's because that is the real Gollyzilla.
That looks familiar to me, doesn't it? I mean, it looks like, I want to say I've seen it in maybe Sylvester cartoons where somebody's dressed up like as a kangaroo and then, you know, get out of that kangaroo costume, but it's really a real kangaroo. You know what I mean? Is it,
yeah.
Or an ape costume. Get out of that ape costume and help me.
No, they've definitely done it in Looney Tunes.
Yeah, so that whole concept right there felt very, I don't want to say old, but classic. Cartoon style right there.
Well, at one point, the costume that Pinky was in looked like a green baloney.
It did kind of, didn't it? When it went over his head and closed and everything. Mm-hmm. And those googly eyes. Yeah, that would be a great costume, by the way. Forget about cosplaying as Yakko, Wacko, or Daughter Pinky in the Brain, but cosplay as Pinky as Gollyzilla. That would be a really awesome costume.
That'd be wild, yeah.
And actually would actually make a little bit more sense for Pinky to be human-sized, dressed up as that. Like the shrink ray or enlargement ray didn't work all the way, perhaps, you know? So there you go, cosplayers. There's your idea from me. That's a free idea. What about you, Kelly? Any moments in here that you thought were cute?
I don't know about cute, but I noticed the way the scientists and even Pinky were speaking at the beginning of the episode. It was definitely a reference to the dubbed films in Japanese and that sort of halting, stilted language, and then Brain slaps Pinky and was like, "Get out, you know." Stop it.
Narf, Brain, let us go and see Gollyzilla. We can watch excitedly as he crashes buildings and then flee in terror.
Snap out of it, Pinky.
Oh, thanks, Brain.
I like how their mouths didn't match up for the scientists with what they're saying.
Oh yeah, and then later on when they're saying Gollyzilla is attacking, and they have these two people in the you know, whenever they had people outside in the streets, their lips would never really move. I also like how the two scientists laughed, just the ha 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 ha. I personally like the part where the lovers are out in the park or something. The girl has I forget what her name was, but it sounded very Japanese. And the guy's name is Herschel.
Mm-hmm.
So, not the most Japanese name, but I just thought that was cute. This episode, by the way, was, like we said, was written by Charles M. Howell IV and Gordon Bresick, and those two wrote Hooked on a Ceiling, which is
the best episode ever.
I know. I felt horrible, Kelly, during our panel at Phoenix Fan Fusion. I couldn't. I was like, Charles M. Howell co-wrote the episode with, why can't I think of it?
Yeah,
the one with Michelangelo.
It was early in the morning.
It was. I had just done a lot of tech things trying to get the Skype to work and everything, so I had to cut myself some slack, but I felt so dumb. And then
I was up all night driving to get to the Comic-Con. So.
But people in the audience gave some interesting responses. Look, it's called The Painting with the Michelangelo Guy. It's like, that's definitely not the title.
Not the title, no. Painting with Michelangelo. Nope, it's not that.
Well, I guess, Nathan, is there any other, Nathan or Kelly, is there any other moments in this that you thought were funny, or should we move on over to the next segment?
I wonder if the whole, shoe thing, I wonder if that's, being racist or anything, I mean, I know it's a thing in, Japan to take your shoes off, but I feel like they're, making fun of that.
Yeah, they were making fun of the custom, which... I personally, I shouldn't speak because I'm just a white guy, but so what do I know? But I saw it as good fun,
Sure.
I didn't see it
I
as
could see someone maybe being offended, but I mean, I personally wasn't offended because I'm not, of that. But, I just wanted to point out that it could be taken offensive. I'm sure someone has. And
if you are offended by it, I'm sorry. I mean, I don't know what to say. Then if it's offensive, then it is. I stand corrected.
But that's this is 20-something years ago. This is a different time.
Exactly. A lot of you listeners weren't even born yet, so there.
Yeah, it's somebody on Twitter was talking about the casting of Mickey Rooney as Mr. Yunioshi in Breakfast at Tiffany's. And it's talk about offensive, but it was the 60s, and that doesn't make it okay. But I know that the thought process behind that was different than what it would be today.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah. But different times, different levels of tolerance.
Absolutely.
So hopefully we're moving in a better direction.
I would hope so. Slowly but surely, it seems sometimes. And sometimes with a few steps backwards, but, whatever. Some trying to move forward anyway. Anyway.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and move on to our next segment, and it is called That Smarts. And That Smarts was written by Peter Hastings, and it was directed by Adu Payden. Nathan, why don't you tell us what happens here in That Smarts?
Okay. So, Brain has realized that, he keeps trying to take over the world, and it never happens, and he's trying to figure out why, and once you know it, he finds out it's Pinky's fault. He has a whole graph of Pinky's face after he inputted the numbers. I don't know how that worked. But anyways...
It looked like his T81 Texas Instrument kind of plotting the graph.
Graphing calculator. And you just put the calculations in, and it sketches the person.
Although it had a Newton kind of a touchpad feature with a little pen, which I thought was cool. Very 90s calculator either way. But yes, Pinky's the problem.
Yeah. It was all Pinky's fault. So the solution is not to get rid of Pinky, but to make Pinky smarter. So, simple idea, but it's complicated to actually do. So he creates this whole machine and turns it on, and then, Pinky, you would think he would sound different, but he sounds exactly the same when he comes out, but he's really smart. And then he's doing all these calculations, and Brain's like, "Oh, we'll do these things. We'll do air hockey things, and we'll make everyone floating on the floor, and then they can't move, and we'll take over the world." And he's like, "Well, actually, your sign, it should be a cosine, and therefore it won't work." And then, so he's going through all his math, and it turns out that all of Brain's ideas aren't going to work before they even start to do them. And Piggy's like, I don't think it's my fault that we keep failing this. And he's like, and Brain's like, yeah, I mean, I did the math. Look at this. It's your fault. And then Piggy's like, actually, this is wrong, and this is wrong, and here, this should be a 3, and there. And then it turns out the whole reason they keep failing is Brain's fault. So Brain's like, you know what? I'm going to make myself dumb so that Pinky will be the smart one. And then Piggy's like, you know what? I liked it so much better when I was dumb. So they both make themselves dumb without the other one knowing. So then they end up both dumb. And that's how the episode ends. But they're both dumb and they can't make themselves smart because they don't know how. There you go.
And they don't know what to do tomorrow night.
Yeah.
So, yes, I would hope that eventually they'd fix the machine somehow. Probably accidentally.
I don't know. My theory is the machine never worked in the first place.
Oh, really? That's also a possibility, I suppose. Well, let's talk about any of the cultural references. I mean, they mentioned before they it sounded like they're going to break up or something like that, which, by the way, did happen in the comic book. This has a very similar opening to one of the previous comic books that Nathan and I reviewed, where the Brain says, "This is all your fault, so I'm going to get rid of you, and you have to leave the lab." And I thought he was almost going to do it this time, but Pinky mentions, "Oh, you don't want this to happen because you don't want to be like Jerry Lewis. Think of how greasy your hair is going to get." There's also a reference to Jimmy Hoffa, who was a labor union, the head of the American Labor Union. He disappeared under mysterious circumstances. He can currently be found somewhere, 6 feet under, with cement on top of him, perhaps. I don't know. Who knows? Who knows where Jimmy Hoffa ended up? I like how Brain said he was just going to be like him. He came back up from vacation. So I would really like to see that plan. Like, hello, I'm Jimmy Hoffa. But there was also a romantic book that the Brain was going to publish. And there was something about, like, if you said the words, that it was going to put out a hypnotic tone or something like that. Wasn't quite sure. I'll play the clip right here. But at any rate, the book had the names Gertrude Stein and Alice B. Toklas mentioned in the writing. And those two were not only famous writers, but they were also lovers. And I believe they were mentioned in the Ernest Hemingway episode of Animaniacs that we discussed. So, yeah, there's a little bit of forward thinking right there, I suppose. By the way, Brain looks a lot, those romance trash novels that Brain is on the cover of. So it's supposed to be like the Fabio role, I suppose, on there. But, yeah. Anyway, that's about it I can really think for the references. But Kelly, what were some moments in this that you thought were cool?
Well, I thought the romance novel part was funny. I was trying to read the title on it, and all I could make out was something about tartans. So it looked like a Scottish romance. So, I don't know, maybe I don't think Outlander was out back then, the books, but, that's a whole subgenre of romance novels that people are really into.
It doesn't seem like you see those romance. It seems like in the 80s and 90s, I would always like it right in the checkout aisle. There would be, like, Fabio right there next to the spearmint gum or something. so that people can get them. I don't see those books anymore in the checkout aisle, at least. They might still have them in the magazine area.
Well, the covers aren't the same. I mean, even back when I was working at a bookstore, they were moving away. Like, instead of having people on the covers, they started having flowers or high heel shoes or, just more like symbols or things like that. So they got away of the whole, bodice ripper sort of art style. Very modern covers now. So even if you saw one, you might not even recognize it as a romance novel necessarily.
Wow.
So the days of Fabio are gone.
Yeah, sorry, Fabio.
Well, I hope his nose is okay. Remember when he got hit?
Oh yeah, by
bird?
like a bird when he was all a roller coaster.
Oh, that was the weirdest, freakiest thing ever.
It never happens. It never happens except to Fabio, and it hits him right in his $1 million face.
I know, right? Yeah. Crazy. But I wish I could have understood what Pinky and the Brain actually were saying half the time because of all these formulas and equations and whatnot, but couldn't understand it. But it sounded really intelligent.
Well, let's get to somebody who knows a little bit about formulas and stuff like that, at least more than me and Kelly. Nathan, does Pinky's or the Brain's science work out at all with these?
It all works out.
So, so if I copied down some of this and made the corrections, I could actually take over the world? Is that what you're saying?
Well, you can get an A on your tests, your math tests.
Well,
all of it is completely true. I don't know.
You don't know. What were some moments that you liked in this one, though?
I liked when Brain said, "Are you pondering what I'm pondering?" And then Pinky said, "Yes, I am."
That was good.
That will actually lift people several inches off the ground, immobilizing them.
Hey, God, Brain! It's like giant air hockey! Brilliant! Oh, wait, no.
Yes, Pinky?
Well, the coefficient values of your Fouriers. I mean, this should be sine, not cosine. Point! Kind of flips the whole thing around. Won't work.
Pinky, that's right. Are you pondering what I'm pondering?
Yes, I am.
It was a little bit like, as soon as this episode started off, my wife said, "Is this like Flowers for Algernon?" And
I thought the same thing.
Yeah, so I was like, it's a little bit like that story,
I forgot about. I was going to mention. I made a mental note, like I should mention that, and then it made me so sad.
Yeah, Flowers for Algernon.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's one of those stories I think most people read when they're in middle school or maybe high school, and it is very similar to this, I suppose. Pinky does feel so sad, like it doesn't deteriorate or anything like that. Just Pinky just feels that the Brain doesn't like him anymore. I just thought that was so... He looked so sad.
I liked it better when it was no Pinky this, bop on the head, no Pinky that, bop on the head, but now, egad, being as smartly is no fun. Brain doesn't like me. I mean, we haven't even tried to take over the world once tonight.
By the way, that little animation of him twiddling his tail right there was used sometimes with the Kids WB promos before going to commercial or something like that. The Brain, like, they would show Pinky, like, saying, "Oh, the Brain said, you know, that I have to sit here until the commercials are done," or something like. They would overdub him, and so when I first saw that, I immediately thought of those little bumpers that I would see on Kids WB. But anyway, there was some good stuff in here. Personally, I like the part where when the Brain becomes stupid and he's tripping and he just looks so happy at how stupid he is. It falls flat on his face and laughs and then says, "Point, I say point." And when he hears that electricity going off in the background, his face drops and the eyes go big and he just has that great expression and they just hold it right there. No animation, just have the flashing lights on that awesome expression that the Brain has. So I like that moment right there personally. And I believe he says that Pinky has the IQ of a horse hoof or a mule hoof, which I thought was a very descriptive way of talking about Pinky's IQ. But some good stuff in this cartoon.
Pinky, scientifically speaking, it's because you are a spazzy, beetle-headed doofus with the intellect of a mule hoof that I have yet to conquer the world.
Well, let's wrap it up real quick with a song. We haven't had a song in quite some time. This song is called Brainstem. And Brainstem was written by Tom Minton, and it was directed by Al Zegler. And in case you didn't know, Tom Minton is in many ways half of the inspiration for the Brain. He's it's half Tom Minton and half Orson Welles in a lot of ways that Maurice LaMarche put together. Well, in this song, the Brain sings about the parts of the brain. At least the majority of them. I'm sure there's many different parts that he forgets, and Pinky has one job, and Pinky does it quite well. He actually does his job incredibly well. He doesn't mess it up at all. And all he has to say is Brainstem. So he does. And in the end, I forgot. The Brain has an awesome tambourine solo where he just stares right at the camera, staring right at you. And it looks a little creepy and very funny at the same time. And then he says that'll make the little squirts happy or something like that. And trudges off. And that's the end of the episode. The end. So there's our song. Now this song for me actually did come in handy in college. I took cognitive psychology, and I did have to point out parts of the brain. And I remember reviewing this song. It is much more complicated than Yakko's World or Wacko's America or something like that. But it did help me a little bit. I think I might have got a B- in that class, so it wasn't perfect, but hey, whatever. I squeezed out a passing grade, so that's good enough for me. So thanks, Brain. What are some of your favorite moments in this song? Kelly, let's start with you.
I really liked it every time Pinky popped in and said, Brainstem, Brainstem.
Nathan, what about you?
I also like that part, and I like when Brain says that ought to hold the little kids, or what does he say?
Yeah. Little squirts or something, little kids. And everybody little kids happy, which apparently is a reference to there might have been some kid show where, and it's kind of undetermined if it's ever even true, but some kid show from the 50s or 60s apparently ended, and the microphone might have still been on, and the host said that'll make the little so-and-sos happy.
You're not going to say it on the podcast?
No. There are people that appreciate our clean record too much for me to say it.
You can look up what the person apparently said, but it wasn't very nice to the kids.
I almost said it, but
it's not the worst word.
It's not. It really is.
It's not something you should say on a kids program.
That's true. And I guess on The Simpsons, right, the Gabbo said something similar too. So it's definitely a joke that is even if it didn't happen, at least with the baby boomer generation, they know they could have sworn it happened, and we all know sometimes it might as well have happened. As sounds too good to be too good. It must be true, I suppose. Well, anyway, that's it for today's episode. I guess we got to get to the water tower rating. So let's get right to it. Out of 5 water towers, how many water towers would you give today's episode? Nathan, let's start with you.
Oh, no, I wasn't ready. Oh, man. Okay. No, I got it. I got this. Okay. Last time I gave it 3.5. Time before that, 3. So this one, I'm going to go with 4. So it's going up. Every episode is better than the last. I don't know, just about some sort of pattern. I like that you find out that Pinky is a genius. It's settled. There's no question about it now. And Brain is so insane in this episode. That's it. There you go. So 4, because it all comes together. Okay.
And Kelly, what about you?
I'm also going to give it 4. I thought it was a really strong episode, and love that there was a song in it as well.
All right. I'm going to give it 3.5. I actually liked it a little less than the definitely less than the second episode, I think. And I think it's just because the first Gollyzilla segment wasn't as funny as I wanted it to be. I know they were trying to be obscure and everything and weird with the yes, I see, but I just found that too weird for whatever reason. And I like weird stuff, so I don't know why I didn't like that much. I did like the Raymond Burr versus Gollyzilla, though. I thought that was funny. They're just fighting. And it seems like they're just fighting over like who gets to have control of a building. I'm not exactly sure what they were fighting over, other than just who gets to be the big angry thing around. Yeah, but I don't know. I'll say 3.5, but it's close to 4. If I could give it a 3.75, I would, but I can't.
You can't.
I'm not allowed to. Well, I think before we wrap things up, let me just mention one more cool thing. There's actually gag credits in these episodes, but they're not really necessarily gag credits. They're more words with definitions to them. So I'm going to mispronounce some of these, but I think they were worth mentioning. So today's was paranoia. Paranoia, that's how you say it. Paranoia. And paranoia is a compulsive repetition of an act until it's perfect. So I would say the brain has paranoia because he just keeps doing it over and over and over again until it's perfect, right? So there you go. Episode 2 was, oh boy, I'm going to totally mess it up. Ultra-crepidarianism. Yeah, I think I might have said it right. But that's giving opinions outside of your knowledge. Talking about stuff that you don't know what you're talking about. Something that I do too often.
Doing it right now.
I'm doing it right now as we speak. And I'm going to completely mispronounce episode 1 of Pinky the Brain. Spizerinctum, which is just the will to succeed. So Pinky and the Brain will teach you something. If you check out their gag credits at the end, you will learn a very weird word. And I believe has something to do with Pinky and or the brain. So there you have it. Okay, well, I think let's go ahead and get to some contact information. Kelly, where can people get in contact with you online?
They can find me on Twitter at Yoda Princess, YODAPRNCSS, or email me, Kelly at BigShinyRobot.com.
And Nathan, what about you?
I'm also on Twitter, Joey. JangoFT, that's me.
All right, and as for the Animaniacast, well, you can find us on Facebook, and on Twitter, and on Instagram, and you can email us as well, which is animanicast@retrozap.com. And speaking of retrozap.com, you should subscribe to the RetroZap feed on your favorite podcast player. That way you get every single one of the fantastic RetroZap podcasts delivered straight to your device, free of charge. And whether it's Star Wars or Marvel or comic books or just pop culture in general, RetroZap has you covered. You can join our Discord group by simply going to discord.animanicast.com. Leave us a positive 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, and we will hopefully read your review on the air, as well as support us by simply going to amazon.animanicast.com. Our TeePublic store is teepublic.animanicast.com, where you can find all different sorts of designs of Animaniacs, Freakazoid, Pinky and the Brain, and just stuff that we thought was cool. There's some Spielberg stuff in there and some Star Wars stuff. and some, I don't know, there's some like Harley Quinn stuff in there too, because I just go, well, Harley Quinn's cool, I'll put her in there too, why not? Anyway, all those different things, let's wrap it up. So for Nathan and Kelly, this is Joey saying, good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
This podcast is not endorsed by Warner Brothers or Amblin Entertainment and is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Animaniacs, Tiny Toon Adventures, Freakazoid, the Warner Brothers logo, all names, pictures, and sounds are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of the Animanicast unless otherwise indicated.
Yes, I...